What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. So, the last 2 hours, I've been listening to U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments in a case called Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. And it is a fascinating case. You definitely need to know about it. The issue here is the state of Texas passed a law that said, hey, we want to protect kids from harmful pornographic content. So if you are a website providing that type of content, you've got to put age verification on your website. If not, you expose yourself to penalties. A lot of companies have decided not to do business in Texas anymore. They've essentially shut down their websites. And so the question the Supreme Court is considering is basically how high of a standard should be applied in reviewing what is viewed as some infringement on free speech. So you can limit free speech if there's a compelling interest, but they're arguing, is it a rational basis, which is a lower level of review, or is it strict scrutiny, which is a higher level of review? The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals did rational basis. The Free Speech Coalition appealed. One really interesting thing that happened in the hearings is the Supreme Court justices pressed and said, okay, your clients are basically porn companies, right? And they admitted, yeah, that's who we're representing. Our interests are free speech, but we're representing companies in the porn industry. And another fascinating thing is it seems like the Supreme Court justices, the attorneys on both sides all agree. There was one really powerful quote that this pornographic content is not meant for children. It's harmful for children, and children are watching it. So there's this accepted idea that children need to be protected, but there's a disagreement in terms of how that is done. And what the attorneys for the porn companies are arguing is let the parents get filtering on their devices. Content filtering is the best answer. It's the least restrictive. It's the least burdensome. Another option would be phone providers putting a default in the device, or IP service providers blocking it at the point of the internet service. And so one of the Supreme Court justices pressed and said, okay, so basically you guys don't want to bear the burden. You want Google and Apple to pay for it. So that is true. And what the porn company attorneys are arguing is we don't want the burden to be on the porn industry to age verify. We don't want adult consumers and viewers of pornography to have to potentially reveal their identity to view pornographic content. They think that'll have a chilling effect and it'll violate their right to privacy, and that there are other easier ways to protect children. But a lot of the debate was around, but are those ways really working? Like, look where we are 20 years later. Have we really protected our children? What is the state of the world? One of the things the attorney for the porn companies argued was, we figured this thing out. We're doing it better than ever. Like, even the Supreme Court has filtering. And then one of the justices said, yeah, and we have an entire IT department. And you can just read into that. What she was saying is, do you really expect parents to be IT departments for their children? And then another justice asked, do you really sincerely believe that parents are more tech savvy at filtering this stuff than their kids are going to be with navigating these devices and accessing content? And then another really fascinating argument was, hey, we've said it's okay and it doesn't violate free speech to verify your identity when you go into a store that sells sexual content, or if you go to a strip club, or if you are gambling online or purchasing alcohol, you have to verify your ID in proper ways. And why should online be treated any differently? That was a really powerful argument. So essentially, one of three things is going to happen. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals applied the lower rational basis standard. The Supreme Court could say, hey, we think you did just fine, and we're not going to take it any further than that. And the Texas law gets upheld, and then all these laws that have passed in all these other states probably get upheld as well. Another opportunity is the Supreme Court says, hey, you actually need to apply the higher standard of strict scrutiny. So the state really has to prove that this is the best and there's a compelling interest and this is the best way to uphold that interest. So Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals take the case back, apply the strict scrutiny test. But then a third interesting option, the Supreme Court sounded like they were actually playing with the idea of saying, hey, it should be strict scrutiny, and we actually think that this law passes strict scrutiny, and we're going to actually take a position or a suggestion on that ourselves in the interest of trying to see that law get upheld. We'll see if they go that way or not and what the majority ultimately does. Stay tuned for sure. But man, people of God, let's be praying for truth, for righteousness, for justice to prevail in Jesus' name. All right, more to come.